Good morning to everyone joining us this morning, and welcome to our Labour Councillors online Zoom surgery. To start with, so you know who's on here, if we introduce ourselves, I'm Councillor Guinness of Cherrywood Ward. If we go over to Aldershot Park Ward.
I'm Councillor Mike Roberts from Aldershot Park Ward.
Do we have Terry on this morning? No. If we go over to North Town Ward.
Hi, I'm Councillor Gaynor Austin, North Town Ward.
Good morning, Keith Dibble, Councillor North Town Ward.
And Wellington Ward.
Good morning, Alex Crawford, otherwise known as Jennifer Evans.
Good morning, Nadia Martin, Councillor for Wellington Ward.
And over in Farnborough, Cherrywood Ward.
Yes, I'm Clyde Rackham, Cherrywood Ward Councillor.
I'm Ashley Holstead, also Cherrywood Ward Councillor.
And it's lovely to see we've got a few residents joining us today as well. So welcome and thank you for coming on and joining us. So to start with, we're going to be talking with Clive. So you've got some feedback this week on the Development Management Committee that you attended?
Yes, thank you, Christine. If people don't realise, Development Management Committee is what we would call planning. So that's where it comes from. First feedback would be on the Soliton Way application by Lidl's for the shopping area. It was passed through on council. We expressed our concern on part of the highway section, and we requested at the time that the exit towards on Ellis Road, the exit and the entrance from Ellis Road, to be actually operating before the shop operated itself to relieve some of the traffic flow. The next major item was on the, I believe it's the first phase of the Union Street East developments, which was passed by committee on Wednesday, and it's purely on the planning application itself. Details on actual building control and everything else goes down at a later date. It was a very good plan, a good way forward for Aldershot and the town centre, hopefully with some housing, social housing, and some housing from private sector, and many shops in a nice walkway. So it's the first phase, and if anyone's got any questions on that, I'm quite happy to take some. Not saying I know the answers, but I'll be happy to take the questions. Thank you.
Has anyone got any questions on that?
On either part.
Clive, it's... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just coming quickly. There are wider issues which the council still got to get to grips with. But I'll deal with those offline.
Okay, Keith.
Yeah, thank you, Clive. Thank you, Christine. I think we as councillors are getting a briefing next Thursday on an update on the development. But a briefing I had this week, we're talking about 2023, 2024 for completion. So whilst, the phase one of the regeneration has taken a step forward, it's still a number of years before there will be a completed project. So Aldershot Town Centre is still going to have great difficulty as we see the drop in retail while these building works take place. So it's not an immediate to Aldershot Town Centre. It's going to be some years before there's occupation by students or in the housing or any retail there. So a step forward, but still some time before there's an outcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move on. Just before we move on, I just wanted to say good morning to Terry, who's joined us. You want to introduce yourself, Terry?
Yes, hello. I'm Terry Bridgeman, Councillor for Aldershot Park Ward.
Thank you. So our next subject is full council. Keith, could you give us a rundown on that?
Yeah, thank you, Christine. Yeah, last Thursday we had a full council meeting of Rushmoor, and it was an unusual one because actually we spent much of the evening discussing issues which impact on Rushmoor, but actually are national issues or global issues. The first one was I'm pleased to say cross-party support for a motion giving support to Black Lives Matter. And there were some really very good high-quality speeches, which isn't always the case at Rushmoor, from different views of, not different views, but different individual stories of racism. And there was cross-party support, but the key now is that Rushmoor turn this from fine words into action, and we want to see the council really addressing the inequalities in health, housing, education, employment that mean that minorities do suffer, and we want to bring, really drill down and find out what those issues are and see what improvements can be made. It's fine passing words of general support, but the Rushmoor will be judged on the action it takes, and I think again that was a step forward. And another item which was again had cross-party support was adoption of the working definition of anti-Semitism. And this is something which has plagued all political parties and many institutions, and it was not perfect, but it's again a step forward. And again, there was some really good contributions from members, especially colleagues on this talk. Under cabinet questions, where elected members, i.e. the Labour group and other councillors, can ask questions on contemporary topics to cabinet members, and our colleague Councillor Martin asked questions about the status of the weekly bin collection, and also availability of Aldershot of public lavatories in Aldershot Town Centre. And Councillor Martin will update us on those, I think, further on in today's broadcast theme. Councillor asked a number of questions on scrutinising many actions taken by cabinet. So I think we, as an opposition Labour group on the authority, are rolling out the pledge, delivering on the pledge that we gave at the elections, that we will scrutinise and challenge the administration or the executive. We'll support when necessary, and we've done that this week, but we'll also challenge. We've got to make sure that decisions don't go through on the nod, and that it's public money that's being spent, and it's good that millions of pounds are being spent on Aldershot Town Centre, but it's not the council's money, it's the money that the council taxpayers and taxpayers of Aldershot and Farnborough contribute. So that's why we will scrutinise and challenge and question every decision.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. Right, if we go on to our ward updates then, if we start with Aldershot Park.
If I could just have one note regarding what Keith said, is that there was a statement about action from the chairman of PPAB at that particular council meeting. And as usual, he brings forward things in a different way rather than a conventional notification. So I've been back to him and saying, okay, let's have this in writing and detail so that we can have a look. And if we from the opposition wish to add in detail what the scope of the work in relationship to the BAME and other communities is likely to be, then I think we could try and seek to do this as a consensus where we can agree. Because that would be the third occasion he's done something like that. And, we have to, as Keith has said, is scrutiny, yes, when we get down to scrutiny, but we have to make sure the rules of engagement are actually laid down fairly fast.
Yeah.
With regard to Aldershot Park, well, where do you start at the moment? we had a top level behind closed doors meeting this week to actually look at the ongoing issues of Aldershot Park in relationship to antisocial behaviour, drug supply, irregular drinking, maybe illegal, and much more. It was just over an hour. Everybody you would expect to be on call was there. Nadia was also there on call. And the other exercise was to come up with a set of outputs. Now, as most people will be aware, I'm very conscious that there's one thing to talk, there's one thing to have the analysis, but what you need to do is commitments of who's doing what. So almost before the end, I said to the Deputy Chief Executive, right, what are the outputs? Can we go through those and who's going to be doing what? And even then on his list, which I then had to remind him about, he missed out drink and drugs. So, this is why scrutiny is twofold. One is scrutiny at the front level, and it's also scrutiny as regards the action level as well. So we shall see and monitor what comes forward with that, because it could actually end up with being a profile framework for other people who are suffering other issues in other wards as well. So it's not just about Aldershot Park, but Aldershot Park seems to be the key area at this particular point in time. And I welcome the weather this weekend, because last weekend it was horrendous, because as yet people know what the weather was like, and during the week as well. So I think that is very much the key issue. It's not the only issue. There are other issues with regard to Housing Association performance in many directions, mostly with Vivid, but those are taken up on an individual basis directly, and also involving social services, both adult social services and children's social services, domestic violence. It's a sort of panoply of issues that you would expect in a very challenged area, because Aldershot Park is the most deprived area of the borough, and one of the most deprived areas of the southeast. And what I am very much concerned about is, because of having seen the figures, what happens when furloughing finishes. There could be many, and it's not just Aldershot Park, but many areas of Aldershot will have people who are not employed, and that is the lull before what could be a very difficult financial storm for many families, job-wise as well as support-wise, in the very imminent future. Very concerning.
Thank you, Mike. Terry, did you have anything you wanted to? You're on mute, Terry.
Yeah, sorry about that. Nothing Mike covered pretty comprehensive. I mean, nothing seems to change, and the present lockdown situation does make things worse.
Okay, thank you. Northtown, you got a ward update for us?
Do you go first, Gaynor?
Yes, it's really the standard things at the moment in Northtown that we're hearing from other wards as well. So the increase in antisocial behaviour. Myself and Keith are liaising with Vivid, the community residents organisations, and also with the police to see what can be done about this. And also litter seems to be a big continuing problem. The other issue is around the hill development around Pegasus Avenue, with lorries who should be following an agreed route going to taking the wrong route through residential areas and disturbing residents, and also the noise coming from the building site. So that's from the pile generator, and these things have been raised with Vivid and with Hill. And the other thing is weekly bin collections, which I think Nadia is going to update us on, which residents are very keen to get back on. And also the prospective opening of some more of our North Town businesses on the 4th of July. And they're currently working to make sure that they can open safely. So I'm sure some of those issues, Keith will have something else to say on.
Thank you, Gaynor. Very, very comprehensive list there. Yeah, just picking up on a couple of those things. The pile driving, which of course has to be done on the building site, but of course when it's the warmest 3 days of the year and everyone's got their windows open, it was pretty unbearable. I mean, I live in Hague Road, probably half a mile from the building site, and it just sounded like someone was banging a drum every 3 or 4 seconds. And if it's like that half a mile away, what on earth would it be like if you're in the road next door? But unfortunately, these things have to go ahead, and because of the delays, because of the lockdown, the working hours have been extended. So it's starting at 8 and finishing at 5, the pile driving, whereas some people are still in bed at that time. Not anyone on this call, of course, but some people are. But it is for a short period, but it's an irritation, and it would, if you were next door to it, would drive you mad. Litter is a real problem, and I don't know. I think that's probably consistent across the borough, that people seem to have, with the easing of the lockdown, seem to have forgotten that if you take stuff with you, you should take it home or put it into a bin. So that's a bit depressing. Picking up Mike's point about, and Terry's point about action from the police, we were approached this week by local traders in North Town who were very concerned about the increase in shoplifting and the perceived lack of interest in the police in responding to that. So we will be taking that forward very much along the lines that our colleagues in Aldershot Park have done on the antisocial behaviour, because when you've got, for example, one of the stores that has a day shift of two people, often 2 women, well, they're not going to challenge anyone that is acting in an unreasonable way or threatening or does steal something. So we would be looking there for a greater response from the police. And as Gaynor said, we had a Teams call last week with a couple of residents groups, and on Monday we've got a call with residents that have raised a particular issue and our local PCSO. So he's using modern technology still to take these issues forward. But I agree with Mike. Whilst on a personal level, it's a shame not to be walking in the sunshine. I think for antisocial behaviour, it's probably a dampener that is welcome. So busy times, and Gaynor and I will be out on the streets doing a community walk round a section of the ward again, looking for issues and talking to residents. Thank
you. I must say, I did like a post you shared from a well-known chicken place, KFC. Other places are available. That they put out for their rubbish post about don't be a tosser. When you shared that, I must admit I roared with laughter. And I wonder actually if that's maybe a campaign we should look at in getting something similar produced to go out in our wards, because it certainly did make me laugh, but it does make you think.
Gaynor and I had the privilege of meeting the managing director of KFC when we spoke about had a meeting about the traffic issues, and when you see her enthusiasm and energy, and she's not a typical MD, and you can see why she would have approved that term, which many would have probably not signed off as a promotional line, but I think it's very effective.
I thought it was excellent, I must admit. Thank you. Over to Wellington ward.
I think perhaps Nadia would like to speak on this, since she's been covering the town centre and so on. No? Okay, well, I just wanted to comment on the question on chat, which was about the drugs, and we've already had Mike comment on that from Aldershot Park, and it's what I've noticed around not only in Manor Park and in Row Hill ward is also that there seems to be, perhaps it's because there's fewer people around generally, but you're seeing an increasing incidence of drug deals and that kind of thing. And all I do is encourage people to report it to the police, either by ringing 101 or by emailing the police on the Rushmoor police email. And that's all we can do, because it's up to the police to build up their intelligence, to see where these drug deals are going on. And, you know, there's nothing we as individual councillors can do other than support people who are noticing these things and telling them that it's up to the police to take action on that at the appropriate time. And it's usually on building up intelligence where they see particular sites as hotspots, and then they can take action there.
Thank you, Alex. So,
can I come in, Christine, with the drug supply profile for the local area? One of the things we were discussing behind closed doors is where the drugs are coming from. We are very much high on the county lines system locally. We're almost a franchise operation. At the moment, spice comes in from Guildford. Heroin comes in from Guildford. And of course, heroin is the drug of choice at the moment. Of course, cocaine comes in from London. That's how the network works. And locally, the other thing which is we're very much aware of is the amount of cannabis use or misuse. And there are obviously discussions going on the margins about focusing and targeting particular properties. And I know there's one in Aldershot Park, which it is alleged, I have to use that word appropriately, alleged is a drug development factory for cannabis. The police are very much aware of that. And I have asked a simple question: when are you going to do something about it? You know, but obviously that's an operational matter.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I agree. It is really hard. I mean, we've had 2 raids this week on the ward, and we had 1 welfare check raid. But it is a continuing problem, and it's so frustrating as well, because you think, you know, that I can say, you know, 2 of the houses have now been raided at least 4 times, and you think, how long does this have to go on for? Before we actually start seeing a difference.
It's very valuable trade. That's why if you get a bust of one of the county lines networks, which there was about late last year when there were 16 people up before the Central Criminal Court, and they controlled 7 operations, including our area of the Blackwater Valley. Of course, backfill just goes quickly, doesn't it? It's always a backfill because it's so lucrative.
Yeah. Right, Cherrywood. Clive, Ashley, have you got any updates?
Yes, 1 or 2, I suppose. To take on from what you said, Christine, about the drugs raid, we've also got a house nearby that's been boarded up because of the drugs situation. I'm sorry to say that's been boarded up for about a month and broken in 3 or 4 times already. And some of the drug dealers are still carrying on, but the police are aware of that. On a good news side of it, our play area, which is a super duper top of the world opening one next month, when the release for all play areas is finished, and hopefully will be open to our young children to play on. And also that's in Moor Road, and the start of the work of the main Moor Road recreation field has started with digging out ready for pump tracks. And then we still do have our main problem, as in other areas, about litter and of course fly tipping as well. But as we keep reporting it, and we get our neighbours keep reporting on it, Moor Road and the start of the work of the main Moor Road. Hello. Yes, and that's mine. I think I'll pass back to Christine and Ashley to do some more updates.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of sort of serious incidents around crime. I believe there was a stabbing sort of round our area. From what I gather, that's treated as an isolated incident and not as a wider thing. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that's very upsetting to hear, but I think it's an isolated incident, and hopefully nothing else like that will be happening. There's been obviously an uptick in crime given the lockdown, but you know, we are working with the Farnborough police officers to see what we can do about the presence in the area.
Thank you, Ashley. Yes, we know we had a section 60 around the Halleh area last night, which basically meant from 5 p.m. last night till 2 a.m. this morning, they could stop and search anyone to check whether they had knives or anything on them. I haven't heard anything this morning about whether it's going to be extended, but they have said they can extend it if they need to.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were finished then, Christian. Just to come up, say that the other good item is that our 12 benches around the around our area, the probably should be finished by the end of next week, and the benches actually be in, so people can use all the 12 benches, couple along by the brook side, everything else. They're all good positive things, and we have to look at the positive things that we're doing around the area as well as some of the downfalls that's happening. Sorry about that, Christine.
No, that's wonderful. Actually, I love the benches, and it's so lovely when you walk around the ward to actually see so many of them being used. And receiving messages now, you know, because there was a bit of negativity at first, people saying, oh, you know, it's going to cause more antisocial behaviour. But actually, I'm starting to receive quite a lot of messages now from people saying, are we going to have more? Can we have more benches? Can we have them here and there? And so it's really good. And hopefully, you know, hopefully we can have lots of people sitting on the benches, chatting, making friends. And, you know, so we're not such a lonely place. You know, what we want is a good community. So yeah, that's absolutely great. So just a quick one before we move on to town centres. A reminder of today is Armed Forces Day. I don't know if anyone's we've posted on some of the Facebook pages that today is hashtag salute our forces. Very proud to have joined in with the photo opportunity on that with Clive and Ashley that's been circulated in the video. So I don't know if everyone wants to do a very quick salute for our forces. If we move on now to town centres and how they're operating, Nadia, have you got an update on that?
Yeah, well, it's just a small one, but the town centre ambassadors are still operating in the town centre, making sure that everyone queues as they should, and it's working quite well. Some of the stickers come off from the ground, so they go around and replace them all. Everyone's keeping the distance, and yeah, it's working quite well. I know the Decathlon opened in Farnborough the other day and it was quite busy, but I've not been down there personally. But Aldershot seems to be working quite well.
That's fabulous. I did when I popped into Aldershot town the other Thursday when it just first opened, and I came across a problem where on the Thursday, obviously, you have the fruit and veg stall.
Yeah.
And so that there was a bit of an issue there. But I did notice that this week, I think it was on the Wednesday before the market, on the Thursday, that they'd actually removed the bench that situates between Lidl's and HSBC.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that made the this self-distancing bit a bit easier.
Yeah, So I was there on Saturday, and they had to tape the bench up because people were just starting to sit on it. And even when it was taped up, someone took a seat, and it was told to get off politely.
Yeah, can I just say, I've only been downtown once because I go down as little as possible. But I went into the Wellington Centre, and I have to say that it was almost empty. Whereas previously you had to queue to get into Boots, I could just walk straight in. And similarly for Smiths, there was so few people around. And so, the great idea that there was going to be a huge rush of people to go back to shopping because they'd all been pent up. It certainly doesn't seem to, it wasn't happening on Aldershot the day I went down anyway.
No, I was there on Saturday, and the only queues that were there were for the market stall, Lidl, and Subway and Sports Direct. But the Wellington Centre has a one-way system, but it wasn't. The market stall was the busiest, but they sold out quite quick.
Christy, could I make a couple of comments?
Yeah.
On the Saturday I think it was the Saturday when all the shops were open, the non-essential use. I actually did a profile of Aldershot, Farnborough, Camberley, and Guildford. Yes, all those places, and the busiest were focused on, unfortunately, Mr. Ashley's place, Sports Direct. Wherever you went, and God knows why people want another set of trainers, and even Primark wasn't that busy in Camberley. It was busy, but it wasn't. You didn't have people queuing outside the door. Exactly the same in Guildford as well. But of course, you had the photo opportunities of Oxford Street, places like that, where people were fighting to get into the Nike store. Yes, how many trainers can you use? The other thing which has been very beneficial in the town centre is the good news and the bad news. The good news is that they blocked off areas like parts of Station Road and Victoria Road, where there was certainly conflict parking and danger to pedestrians. And that has always been an issue. So it's much better now, although I do notice, and I've warned John Trussler when I go past there sometimes later in the evening, that some people do exercise their apparent rights to actually remove some of the Lego kit the other side of the road and park up. So the council has to be very wary of that. But it hasn't solved the problem in Station Road, opposite, adjacent to Ascot Court, where you can have 3 or 4 vehicles parked fully on the pavement in a DY, double yellow system. I'm hoping when Rushmoor gets back to administrating its parking arrangements, which I think are going to happen next week, that they now are able and better to be able to focus where the areas of conflict are manifesting themselves, where I've mentioned there, and also in Short Street, where people have got nothing to do with disabled parking are blocking the disabled parking bays and sometimes having 3 or 4 cars parked up there. So I think there are still issues to be worked through. And the other good news is that if you want to go to Lidl, if you go late afternoon, middle of the week, you've got no problems of getting in.
Did you want to come in on that, Hash?
Not on.
You're on, Hash, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. My keyboard shortcut to unmute doesn't work very well when I've got like 8 other programs open. So apologies for that. I just wanted to say quickly, and notwithstanding the other issues that have been raised about the town centre, I have been a couple of times to the town centre to a couple of my favourite shops, particularly the game shop, which is a great shop with board games and miniatures. And I have no financial interest in the game shop at all, but it's just fantastic and I love the hobby. But they've got great social distancing measures in place. They get you to wear a mask. admittedly, I wore mine wrong, and they corrected me, but it's all good. But a lot of the shopkeepers and businesses, they're trying really hard to get people to come in, spend money, and they've taken really strong measures to try to manage that. Now, notwithstanding, we've got to take quite serious measures from the virus. We've got to take real precautions. Local businesses are taking it really seriously, and they have put really good measures in place. So I'm saying if you do need to get something from town, you should go. That's my view. That's me personally. I'm not saying that for other people, but I've done that, and I found it to be possible. So, and to be safe. So I'll leave that to you guys.
Thank you, Hash. Now, of course, our towns are slowly reopening, but unfortunately, at the moment, our leisure centres can't. Alex, have you got an update on what's happening with the leisure centres at the moment?
Yeah, sure. I questioned Maurice Sheehan at the council meeting about this on Thursday, and he gave his response. But I also looked on the Places Leisure and the Active Nation websites to see what they were saying. And Places Leisure, as we know, operate the Farnborough Leisure Centre and the Aldershot Pools and Lido. And they say that they were disappointed to learn this week that they wouldn't be allowed to open from the 4th of July because they're an indoor sports and fitness centre. So that was it. But they are hoping that the government will change its mind, and they're lobbying hard through the trade association to get that to happen. At the council meeting, Maurice Sheehan did confirm that when the government approves the reopening of leisure centres, Places Leisure would then need 3 weeks to get Farnborough Leisure Centre and Aldershot Pools and Fitness Centre ready to open. But unfortunately, Aldershot Lido will remain closed this year. Although I did see a very interesting proposal online, which was that in order to reopen places like Aldershot Lido, every other lane should be emptied of water.
The ducks would like that.
I hadn't realised that our Prime Minister had taken such an interest in Aldershot Lido, but there we are.
Do you think with not having the Lido open, because obviously we know the mechanics of the Lido, which is obviously hidden and people don't see and realise, the great power of what goes on behind the scenes. Obviously the mechanics are all very old. Do you think it's going to cause much of a problem having it not operate this year?
Well, I think in one sense, this would be a great opportunity for Rushmoor Borough Council to move forward its proposal to refurbish and upgrade the Lido, because if they could get on with that plan, but unfortunately, I think that may be falling foul of the financial limitations that Council now has because of the COVID-19 situation. But if they could have moved forward on that plan, they could have done, prepared the way for the new Aldershot Lido coming forward. But as it is, I don't know. There should be the possibility for the engineers to do some, if you like, holding maintenance in order to make sure that things don't just corrode and seize up. But that's for engineers to sort out. I'm not an engineer.
Thanks, Alex.
Hello, Christine.
Yes,
Can I
guys.
just
Sorry.
comment?
Yeah.
On the Lido, I've been round the actual plant centre there, and quite a few parts of the plant they have to send away for bits and pieces to maintain it, and they also end up making some of their own parts to actually fit it to make it carry on working. It does, as Alex said, does rapidly need replacing across the whole board. It's a very old system which is starting to break down and deteriorate, and this would be a great opportunity. But as Alex said, finances at this moment in time actually may occur that to be put back a few years. On the town centres, I've been into Aldershot and Farnborough, and they seem to be working quite well at this moment in time. And also in North Town, the closure of part of the road system in North Town, the South Camp Road, to actually work quite well on the distancing system. And I've also noticed that one of our residents wants to have the talk about town centres as well. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Were you talking about North Camp?
North Camp, yeah, you should have done.
I think it was North Camp, yeah.
Yeah.
North Town is thriving. The shops are co-op, one stop, and Star off license are providing, as they have done throughout the lockdown, critical and important goods for everyone. No need to go into the town centre, but
actually, yeah, generally across. I mean, I don't know about across the country, but certainly across Rushmoor, I would say, our local shops have, been such an important part.
An outstanding, Christine. I think all those
they really have, and I really hope that if we do ever get back to normal, that people don't forget that and carry on supporting the local shops that have helped and stayed open through this and supported all the residents.
And I think we as a group of local councillors, should thank those, whether they be the national chains, whether they be independent stores, but those old-fashioned corner shop type things have done amazing. Been really the safety net for our communities for food and services. So I think we should all thank them. Not that we're going to salute again, but we should salute those small community-based shops again, and thank everyone.
Absolutely, they've most definitely been outstanding all the way through. And talking of things that have gone all the way through is our bin collections. Now, obviously, we know that everything's changed with those, and for ages now we've been on every other week with our collections. Nadia, have you got an update on if anything's changing on our bin situation?
Yeah, I did ask the question at full council on Thursday, but unfortunately there's no fixed date as to when we're going to go back to weekly collections. The council are working with Circle and just playing it by ear, so as soon as they know, we'll know.
I think what I was planning to do, or maybe you should do it, Nadia, is actually write to the leader of the council, Clifford, so that the council can make a statement on this. Because I think residents of the borough just want to know, because at the moment we're passing on our opinions and quotes, but I think it'd be really good for the council just to make a statement to inform everyone, because I can understand why there's a reluctance to go back to weekly, but I think part of leadership is to make decisions and tell people, and I think we need the council leaders to be doing that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you, Mike. Alex?
Yeah, can I just ask a question here? Is it possible to, I know they're saying, there's still staff off, Serco's still got staff off, and therefore this why they have to stick to the fortnightly regime, but there do seem to be particular places where they're having difficulties because there isn't a weekly collection. So, for example, in Wellington ward, there seem to be difficulties in the blocks of flats where they, since it's not a weekly collection, the rubbish seems to cause difficulties there. And I wonder if there's particular parts, for example, when they had a trial a while ago of fortnightly collection or whatever it was, the Garrison married quarters seemed to be a particular area where they had difficulties with fortnightly, and that I just wonder if there may be hotspots like that around the borough that could benefit from having weekly collections, whilst generally they might want to be sticking to fortnightly. But that's probably perhaps that's too detailed for the Serco and the council to work out. I don't know.
And then some communal bins are being done weekly, Alec. In North Town, some of the bins are being done weekly. So they have given it some thought, but I don't know what the what the full plan is. But good question. Good question.
Thank you. Alex, can we come back to you on a COVID-19 update?
Yeah, sure. In terms of COVID in Rushmoor, there's some good news. The latest information from the Office for National Statistics was that no residents of Rushmoor actually died in the week running up to the 12th of June, which was the latest week that they had data for. And that data meant that the total number of residents who died from COVID-19 since the beginning of March has been 78. And the only sort of question I would make about those statistics is that nearly half of those were in care homes, which is a much higher proportion in care homes than generally across the country. So this does seem to indicate that somehow Hampshire, through its resilience forum, failed to do enough during March and April to protect the residents of the care homes in Rushmoor. And so that's a question I've put through to the Hampshire Resilience Forum. The other good news is that in terms of infections in Rushmoor, there have been only 7 infections amongst Rushmoor residents in the whole of June. And so that it's levelled off for a total number of infections as 400 over the whole period. But I would say that as we can see with all these gatherings that have been taking place, the COVID pandemic is far from over. And so there may be further infections and very sadly, further deaths in Rushmoor in the weeks and months ahead. So that's about the actual statistics. With respect to services, I'm very pleased to report about the Vine Centre. It's celebrated 3 months of its COVID services this week, and it's delivered over 8,000 services to over 500 clients during that period. And what they're going to do in order for us as ward councillors to appreciate how the demand for those services has gone is at the end of this month, they're going to produce a ward breakdown of the different kinds of services, how that's been handled in each ward. And the indications are that the most services have gone to Aldershot Park, Cherrywood, North Town, and Aldershot Town Centre. So that shows that in a sense where the greatest deprivation is in the borough. That's really all I have to say about the feedback on the COVID pandemic.
Christine, can I come in at this point? It's one of the things I've been able to do quickly this morning. I need to do a lot better is to look at one article in the Guardian, but more importantly, the independent SAGE report, which is done by Sir David King, who's the eminent chief medical officer past for the UK. And also Mr. Costello, who one of the other people leading it is one of the former key people from the World Health Organization. And there is an analysis which I saw from Christine, who's one of the senior professors in analysis. And the figures, which are about 3 or 4 weeks always behind schedule, would suggest that the level of infection and deaths has leveled off, which people may say is a good indication, but unfortunately it is not a good indication. If you look and map against other European countries, they themselves have had a levelling off and have now, like Germany and others, have had a bump, which actually goes the other way. So I think those who have been suggesting from the analysis that we could be in for a September wave, second wave, and also from the statistics for the test and trace system, which is proving in real numbers terms. A lot of these figures actually come from the government, but of course you're not going to be able to see now because they're not publishing them. That the test and taste situation is very limited as regards picking up people who have got COVID-19 as well. And there's a very powerful graph that the professor was able to unveil, which actually detailed how little of the test and trace really is actually culminating in picking up people. So I think the concerns which many have raised about, are we releasing the lockdown too fast? And it's not just the independent stage which has suggested that could be something. Many of the people on, say, the government stage also, and if they had a different view from the government, which has always said it was following the science, you never saw them again at the briefing, like the chief nursing officer and the chief medical officer and others. So I think we may well be in a very much a concerning levelling off stage, with the indications that many people have now given up on the pandemic, seemingly, because the government has, as we've seen all along, has put forward messages which can be looked at and evaluated in more than one way, and has given almost a carte blanche thumbs up for getting out and about. You saw that in Bournemouth this week, where 500,000 people turned up along the coast there. And if you have the indication which was officially given at the last time, they actually made a public statement of one person who is infected. One person will have 1,750 people to actually get that one person. If you divide that into the 500,000, you end up with 3,000 people. And Alex is quite right that the combinations of people coming out and accumulating themselves in streets, etc., is not a recipe for levelling positive. It's a recipe for levelling negatively.
Thank you, Mike.
So we have to be very careful about this.
Have you got an update on the larder?
Yes, thank you, Christine. The larder has delivered approximately about 150 food parcels recently in the last 2 months, and they are still doing deliveries for items such as pick up from pharmacies and such things like that. They are also making calls to our local residents on welfare stuff. So the Church of Good Shepherd are actually doing a very good part on that. And also our local COVID-19, even though in the last week they haven't had any calls as such. And I think all areas are doing very good at this moment in time.
Thank you. Going back, I think we've got a question from Nadia.
Yeah, hang on. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Oh, good. My question is about bins in my area.
Yeah.
Hawley Road, just by the ambulance station at the end.
Yeah.
There was a poo bin there, and I remember reporting it on Twitter to Rushmoor Borough Council that it was overflowing.
Right.
And then 2 weeks later, the whole bin disappeared. No bin there now. Just wondering why Rushmoor are taking bins away.
That's not normal practice. I will get in contact and find out what happened with it.
That bin at the bottom of that hill, the Hall Road. It was taken away quite a while ago. I just thought about it now when we were talking about refuse collection.
Okay, no, I will investigate and get back to you on that. Find out, see if I can find out why. To see if we are certainly. I mean, Cherrywood currently has, I believe, more bins than any other ward in Rushmoor, and we certainly are looking at getting some more, especially because we're having all these benches put in. So we are looking to have extra bins put in close to the benches, not where you're sat on top of them, but close to them. Did you want to come in on that, Clive?
Yes. Round by our benches, we've had requested that additional bins to be put by them, and also that they, as you just said, they're not right on top, so you don't sit next to a smelly old bin when you're trying to talk to people. In addition to that, I think residents need to be noticed, and we've got signs that you can put on them that all our rubbish bins are allowed to put dog waste into them now, and there should be notices on the bins to actually indicate that. If any areas are not, you can let us know, because I've got spare stickers that go onto the bins.
Keith?
Yeah, it's been interesting this morning about discussion about bins and benches, because over certainly this last couple of weeks when we've had good weather in Northtown, it's been quite noticeable. Something we've known, but it's even more noticeable in good weather how few bins we have. Well, this year, as a result of lobbying by this group of councillors, the excellent Labour group, we've got in more money to spend in ward grants, and maybe that things like benches and bins as a one-off expenditure that money could be used for that. So Gaynor and I, certainly for Northern, would be very interested to hear where residents would like to see an additional bench and a litter bin. And this week, a champion of Northtown, one of our very enthusiastic residents, whose mum happens to be a councillor in Portland, a Labour councillor, I must add, sent a photograph of on Portland. They've on the benches, they've put some signs called the Happy to Chat bench, and encouraging people to sit and have that chat or a little bit of gossip about local issues. And I think the sort of thing that we might be quite keen to take forward. So Gaynor and I in Northtown, I'm sure colleagues from across the borough will be keen to know where residents would like to see a new bench. Certainly in Cherrywood, with 12 new benches, you're doing amazing work there. And again, litter bins, because whilst we discussed earlier on the minority of people that seem unable to put litter into a bin, the more bins we have, I think would be better for everyone to take pride in their community. So maybe we could ask the question: where would you like a bench, and or where would you like a new bin?
I'd like to remind people as well, if they download the Love Rushmoor app, that if you're using a bin and it is full, you can report to Rushmoor Borough Council that it's full, to get it picked up and emptied quicker. And
they're pretty quick at dealing with that. Last Monday morning, one of our Northtown dog walkers reported that there was a load of glass, broken glass on the car park of Ivy Fields, and within an hour that had been swept up by Serco. So when that evidence is there, they can act pretty quickly, which is good.
Thank you. Carl, you've got a question for us about Dudridge.
Yeah, I just really wanted to know what was the latest on it, because it's been going on for over a year now, and they're still getting tickets being issued, and people are avoiding the parking area. But it just seems this waste of 13 spaces that, when I bought my house 20 years ago, it was sold saying that there's a communal parking area for 2 cars per household for the 5 of us that were sort of facing that area, and it's just getting ridiculous, really. It just keeps going on.
It does, I agree, and it is so frustrating. I mean, the times I've been out to speak to you, and I've said myself, the trouble is, this is obviously Vivid that have sold off the parking areas to Dudridge, and of course the areas that lead to them belong to Hampshire. And so we have still continually tried to fight this, having lots of meetings Unfortunately, our last meeting that we were due to attend was obviously brought to a dramatic halt because of the COVID-19. And currently, at the moment, us councillors still aren't allowed to enter the council offices. The last person that would have an update would be the county councillor, Ros Chad. Clive, have you got anything?
Can I just say something else? I think the problem is they were going against government guidelines and still issuing tickets. I mean, it was supposed to be just key workers working in the beginning of the pandemic and lockdown, and they carried on issuing tickets, or sorry, penalty charges or whatever they call it. So they shouldn't have been.
Sorry about that, Cold. We're coming on that. It's a very awkward situation because they are a private company, a nationwide private company, and without too much detail, until we can get back to our talks within our council and within the county councillors, there's little more of an update. We just need to get back on board when we can to actually push this forward and see what they can do. They've obviously bought some land, parking spaces in certain areas around the borough, which they don't want, and they've been offering them parts back to us, but it doesn't help us within your area. So we are, as soon as we can, we will get back and organise another meeting so we can find out what's going on.
It's just that anxiety.
We are still on it, and we are still, trying our best to fight against it.
Can I just make a comment here about this whole issue of these private parking operators? If you feel that you're not, you shouldn't be paying them for these so-called penalty charges, there's a very good Facebook group that you can look up, and they will give you advice about what not to do. And the most important thing to do is not to contact them, not to give them any information, and not to pay. And then they will be forced to take you to court, and then you will be able to make your case at court. But I would think in the current situation, they would be very unlikely to take anyone to court in the situation during a COVID-19 pandemic where they're trying to enforce parking charges. It would just be ruled out of court. That would be my judgment. But of course, if I would suggest that people look on that Facebook page and take the advice that's given.
Yeah, I've done that, but you just keep constantly getting hounding letters from, I don't know whether they're real solicitors or not, and also this, you're going to be approached by this, the television program saying won't pay, we'll take it away, sort of thing. They're sort of trying to use that tactic as well.
Yeah, of course, and they will threaten and they will bully and they'll do everything. But the only way they can actually squeeze money out of people is if they go to court and get a court order, which can then be followed up. And they, very few of these private parking companies actually go through with that, because it's in the end, when they go to court, quite often they get ruled out of order.
Could I come in on this point as well?
Oh, sorry, Mike, go on.
Yeah, just a quickie. The actual garages weren't sold by Vivid; they were sold by First Wessex. Almost one of the last things they did. But
I'll be
all I would say is that there have been other attempts to actually bully, as has been said, and I've said to people, just play it all the way. Just play it all the way. Just rip up everything that comes, because if they are serious, which they're not, they want to extract the money without actually doing the legal process. Right? Take me to court. They just don't do it. And I've had other people who've just gone all the way, and it's all gone quiet.
Yeah, but unfortunately, some of our Nepalese neighbours who don't understand the language have actually, have got really scared and just paid. And then when I've spoken to them, they've realised they could have just done what you just said. But
yeah, I think that is something that there needs to be put out with the Nepalese community, if that has been a particular issue. and in their language, and say, if you are bullied by this lot, just do not pay.
I've told them, and they're all spreading the word.
I just wanted to
did you want to
say,
come in?
yes, please. Thank you, Christine. So, what happened in your area, Carl, happened in an area close to me in Aldershot Park about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now. Exactly the same thing. And as the councillors at the time, the whole council, with cross-party support, gave impassioned speeches about how disgraceful that kind of mercenary activity is. They really did. But what I'd like to see is exactly what you're talking about. I'd like the council to take action to give people a guide as to how to combat these unfair charges, and particularly the bullying and harassment. But I think that's what it is. That's my opinion about that kind of thing. I had one myself, and I looked on one of the sites, and one of the things that they advise you to do is initially you get like a letter from a debt recovery service. I denied the debt, so you can only undertake debt recovery services if you accept that there is a debt in the first place. Otherwise it's illegal for them to do so. So you immediately deny the debt, and say any further correspondence is harassment. And I know some of the advices don't give them any details and that sort of thing, and that does work for the most part, but there are other steps you can take, and some of the sites are really detailed and what you need to do. But I agree with you, there's not nearly enough support for some people that are not going to be in a position to take advantage of that advice for whatever reason. And I think really it is an issue, and something needs to be done, because that kind of mercenary behaviour is happening more and more across different parts of the country as well.
Thing is, though, none of us can sell our houses because you can't now say there's parking. Because our 10 houses, unfortunately, we're the only 10 houses like it where we're facing a preserved big, long, tall bush that there's a preservation order on and can't be taken down. So we can't lower the curbs and make our gardens into a driveway like everybody else can on the estate, because they're facing onto a road. We're facing a massive big bush that's been there for a soundproof. And so we just can't, us 10 can't put our house on the market because we can say, well, you can't park your car here.
Yeah, Clive and I have been looking at that as well. Obviously, we can't do anything about the bush, but we are looking at other areas that maybe we might be able to try and convince Hampshire to do something with.
Yeah,
we are still working on it. I promise, Carl.
Yeah,
we're trying. We are trying.
I know we've had this 3.5 months you can't think about, which is, that's fine, but it's been going over a year now. It's just getting silly.
I know. I appreciate that. As we said from the beginning, I'm fortunate where I am that Dudridge haven't brought the car park where I am, because with myself and my husband, we couldn't afford to be paying out. Thank you.
Okay, thanks anyway.
Ashley, I think we've got an update on Stagecoach.
Yes, we do. There's an update to the timetable and the frequency. So the yo-yo bus is going to be 15 minutes Monday to Saturday, and Sunday every 30 minutes. And then the number 1 bus is going to increase in frequency from Monday to Friday to every 10 minutes. The morning, evening and weekend services are going to remain the same, but the daytime service is going to be every 10 minutes. The number 2 route is every 30 minutes Monday to Saturday. And the number 3 route is got, just depending on the one you take, it's very different. So I would check online before taking the number 3 to make sure when it is and what's happening. There have been complaints from residents about face coverings not being worn on public transport. Obviously, if you have breathing difficulties, you are exempt, and obviously there are other groups of people that are exempt, but government guidelines is that you should be wearing face coverings on public transport. We're going to see what we can do, sort of talking to Stagecoach, what can be done around sort of face coverings and remaining safe on public transport. but obviously it's a lot of responsibility to put solely on bus drivers. So we're just sort of working out what can be done, essentially.
Thank you. Right, I believe Keith had some extra bits you wanted to say.
Just two small items. Last week we asked for feedback on the booking system or how the household waste recycling centres were going. We had a lot of feedback. I sent that to Hampshire. No, not just as a result of our input, but yesterday Hampshire issued a note, a press release saying they were looking and going to make more spaces available. So it does show that public pressure does pay off. And secondly, something I forgot to do in the ward communication was that the North Town Book Exchange will move from Mess Heads to the North Town Post Office. So from a week's time, the Book Exchange will be operating from the Post Office, which is good news. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you. Clive?
Yes, just a question for Ashley. On the yo-yo that they're using the double deckers at the moment, and it is causing some of our residents some problems. Do we know when they're going to revert back to the single deckers, and also are they going to return to the route that goes underneath the bridge?
So in terms of the route, that will go back as soon as there are single deckers, but they haven't disclosed to me when they will have single deckers back in use. I think at the minute it's being used because there's less frequency on the buses, so they're trying to increase the capacity of the buses. But as soon as I know any further, I'll do an update in one of these surgeries.
Thank you, Ash.
Thank you. Terry, did you have something you wanted to say? You're on mute, Terry. That's it.
Yeah, I'm not now. No, did I have my hand up or something?
I don't know. I just got a message from Alex saying.
Yeah, I saw a big hand in front of your screen, Terry. So I thought that was a signal.
It must have been an accident. You better looking at my message, actually.
Yeah. Good point. I've read your message, Terry. Good point.
No problem. Right, Halleh.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'll be very brief. So I'm just telling you a little bit about what else happening online this week. This Theatre at Home, we still have got the National Theatre at Home is streaming on his YouTube channel, sort of A Midsummer Night Dream. So it started from 25th of June and is available for a week. I did check the Show Must Go On YouTube channel last night, and they're actually streaming the Sound of Music, the full show for 48 hours. So if you're interested, go and have a look at it. The London Natural History Museum, they've got another Nature Live online talk this week on 30th of June at 11:55 a.m. I don't know why 11:55, but it's all about volcanoes. So if got your children or yourself are interested in that, you can join the museum researcher Maria Petroni to find out more about the volcanoes and why they're changing and why they're erupting and all that. Just a reminder that if you're interested in circus, your children are interested in circus, every Friday, Cirque du Soleil, at 3 p.m. they have a special 60 minutes featuring some of their sort of iconic productions, some part of it. They announce it on Friday morning, so just have a look at their website, and it's usually quite entertaining and it's really good. Now, if you need some kind of meditation, there are free online meditation events happening now. You can check Facebook pages like Campwell Meditation. There's quite a lot happening. As Christine mentioned, today is the Armed Force Day 2020. Is an opportunity for the whole nation to celebrate the armed forces community and to recognize the work they do. Obviously, this year it couldn't be an outdoor event, but there's quite a lot happening actually, virtual activities. So if you go on Aldershot Town Centre or Rushmoor Borough Council Facebook pages, there's a lot of virtual activities that you can, take part and get involved. It sounds quite fun. Aldershot Library, again, they still have got their weekly toddler time, which is on 2nd of July at 10:30 a.m. every Thursday at 10:30, and their nursery rhyme time at 10:15 every Saturday. The good news, we've got a few good news. The good news is the Cineworld Cinema in Aldershot is reopening on July the 10th. So keep an eye on their website and see what films they are going to show to begin with. And I think for this last one, I'm going to, last but not least, I'm going to change my virtual background for this one, and tell you a little bit about National Marine Aquarium, which is located in the city of the Plymouth, and is the largest aquarium. They are reopening on Monday the 6th, which is really good news. Probably less good news is that during the lockdown, they have been having a weekly online event, and probably this week will be their last one. Is on Wednesday, the 1st of July at 1:30, and is all about turtle, octopus, and more. So if you or your children are interested in that, you can watch it online. So that's all from me this week. Have a lovely weekend.
That's wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Halleh, and thank you, everyone. It's been nice to see you all again, and hopefully, when this COVID's over, we can get back to normal. But in the meantime, thank you all for joining us, and thank you for the residents that have joined in and asked your questions as well.
And salute.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ash.
No worries.